This is Health First with Dave Fuller, available across Canada through the National Campus and Community Radio Association.
Well, our next guest is Saniyyah Mayo. She has written a book called Identifying and Breaking the Cycle. You've had a tough early life and managed to turn that around. Saniyyah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Am I getting your name right, first of all?
It's Saniyyah.
Saniyyah?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Now we're good. So, Saniyyah, tell us a little bit about this book, why you wrote it.
The book is basically about cycles within families and relationships. I wrote the book because growing up, there's things that I didn't want to repeat with my kids that I seen my parents do. And working with, youth, at-risk youth, I seen that a lot of the problems with the children, it starts in the home. So I wanted to talk about the cycles that are subtle that go unnoticed. Most people talk about substance abuse. I wanted to talk about things like a child being a favorite and how it can impact a child in the whole dynamics of the family.
Tell us a little bit about that. Let's start with that. So, child being the favorite, how is that? Let's say there's 2 or 3 kids in the family, maybe 4 or more. One of them's a favorite. Sometimes that just naturally occurs. How does that affect the other kids, and what's wrong with it?
It affects the kids in a way that when there is a favorite child, resentment can come into play as far as the other children resenting that kid because they're getting preferential treatment from the parents. And even though it's not the child's fault, the other kids doesn't see it that way. They just see it like, you're the favorite, you're getting treated special, and we are not. So it causes division among siblings as well as making them resent their brother or sister.
I know in our family, I come from a fairly large family, and we always tease some of the younger ones that they were the favorites, and whether they were or not, my sister was, but does it affect the whole way that the others look upon how they're being treated as well?
Definitely. I think all cases are not the same, but I think in a lot of cases it can leave a kid feeling inadequate or feeling that something is wrong with them, that they're not getting that special attention, which makes them act out in ways where they become overachievers, or they may want to, have certain characteristics that sibling has so they can get that attention that their sibling is getting.
What are some of the other problems that start at home that really cause a child to feel rejected?
A child to feel rejected, actually one of my chapters talks about that. It's called The Rejected Child. There's a lot of times when parents are in the home, but they're not involved with their children. The old saying is, you're meant to be seen and not heard. And I think a kid can grow up thinking, why don't their parent want to interact with them? I mean, that's how I grew up, feeling inadequate because I had a mother and a stepmother that equally they rejected me in different ways. My mother was never home, and when she was home, she really didn't interact with me. And then my stepmother, she was one of those stepmothers that wanted the relationship but not the kids that came with that relationship. So those are different ways how a child can feel rejected within their home as far as in terms of with their parents.
You talked about youth at risk, and you're really trying to reach out to these or prevent prevent families from putting youth at risk.
Right.
What are some of the key events that take place in a child's life that really can drive them to be at risk?
Basically, definitely rejection, because if they're not getting that love and acceptance in the home, they're going to seek it elsewhere, and that usually is outside of the home, and they usually get involved with deviant behaviors, whether it's, gang affiliation or just acting out in school, fighting, getting to verbal arguments. They're going to act out or embrace that somewhere else because they're looking for something.
So if I have kids myself now, and if my kids are starting to act out or they're starting to get into trouble, what words of wisdom would you offer to somebody that's in that situation?
I would always always suggest talking to your kids, and I do it. And I'm a firm believer of modeling to your kids how you want them to behave. I see a lot of parents just do as I say and not as I do, which is really not effective with a kid. If you want your kids to model certain behaviors, you need to show them that as well by acting it out. Not to say there's going to be some kids that it doesn't matter what you do, they'll still kind of rebel. But I believe in always just communicating with your kids, being upfront and honest with them, and talking to them, hearing them out, not just allowing them to hear you and it being one-sided, but also allowing them to express their feelings as well.
How do we, as parents, get our children to communicate with us, especially teenagers? Sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I actually have too, and with social media, doesn't make it any more better because kids want to Facebook or sometimes my daughter's in the house and she'll text me and I'll tell her to come here. I just think it's just reiterating that having have game night and do things with them, because sometimes as parents we actually want our kids to do the stuff we enjoy and we never think out the box to do things and connect with them with things they actually like. So my daughter likes shopping, so when she asks to go to the mall, I actually go with her. She'll invite me and I'll go look at clothes with her. And then my son, he likes music, so I'll sit and listen to him play and inquire about it, just basically reaching them where they're at and their hobbies and their interests.
How do you think that the way that you're interacting with your kids is making a difference from the way that you were interacted with?
Well, with my mother, there was really no interaction besides dictation, which was clean my house, and things that needed to be done around the house. We never really had one-on-one conversations. My dad, on the other hand, he actually did instill those things in me. That's one thing that I will take with me for a lifetime. He sat down, he talked to me. Even when he didn't agree how I felt, he still heard me out, which made me feel validated, like my feelings were important. And so with my kids, even when I don't agree, even when I am angry, I don't lash out. I just hear them out, because the reality of it is, even though I may not agree, that still may be how they feel.
You have 16 chapters in your book. Why is that a significant number?
No. I didn't even think about it till you said it.
No.
But no, it actually wasn't. It was just I was writing, and when I got to that point, I thought it was
You're done.
Complete. Yeah.
Where did you get the hope from to change your life, or to make it better, or to look for a better life?
At 16, I talk about it in my bio. That's why I thought it was funny that you said 16 chapters. I never even thought about it. But at 16, I actually got pregnant by my high school sweetheart, which is my husband now. And having my daughter and looking at my life, because I was seeking love in different things in different places, and I didn't want my daughter to go through the things that I went through. So I knew it was imperative for me to change, for her to have a better future. And that's what made me think about my life as a whole and what I wanted for my daughter to make a change in my life.
And do you think you're able to break the cycle? Do you have a different hope for your grandchildren than even your children?
Definitely, because the upbringing is completely different. I was raised in a family where, it was always competition and it was always favorites, and the least favorites were made to feel belittled and less than. And with my kids, even though I have three kids, all different ages, I treat them according to their own well-being. I don't show any favoritism. I spend time with all of them. I never want them to feel left out. And I feel like if I model that to them as a parent, then hopefully they will model the same things or even better to their children.
Is all time equal when we spend it with children? I mean, there's some people that suggest that quality time is different than just spending time with your kids.
It's definitely different. And I mean, I'm not saying that I do 15 minutes with my daughter and then 15 minutes with my son. I'm saying I spend time with them according to their need. I have a 16-year-old daughter, which she is the oldest, and, she's going through different transitions in her life that need a little bit more attention than the other two. So, of course, there's times where I'm with her a lot, but I also spend time with my 7-year-old in different ways, and I'll play with her, do her homework with her, most people think, well, you should do your homework with your daughter, but not all parents do. So it's not equally in time in terms of a specific time, but I spend time with them according to their individual needs.
You mentioned social media and the effects that is having on children. How has that changed relationships between parents and children?
It makes it harder. It definitely makes it harder because, when your kids have a Facebook or Instagram or whatever they have, they may not want, even though you're their friend or you're following them, they may not want you comment on every single, post. I actually did that one time. My daughter was actually embarrassed. So it puts a strain on the relationship because they're growing up in a society today where everything is, Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, and so they're losing that sense of communication. So I do text with my kids, but when we're in the home, I don't allow them to text. I actually have them come and talk to me, and I think I just keep, pushing the issue of personal communication. I mean, that may not work for everyone, but I would suggest, always try to talk to them. Even when I take them to school, pick them up from school, I have those conversations. How was school? And wherever it leads, we have a conversation. So I take the little times and try to make them as big as possible to have that communication with them.
Do you need to set limits with kids around social media to enforce the fact that we need to spend time with them?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think there's times when you need to take the phones. I definitely do it. When we're having, certain family times, phones are not allowed because, of course, they'll be texting their friends and on Facebook and Instagram and so forth. So, I mean, I do have those times where if we go out to a movie or we're just all in the living room that there's no phones allowed, because if you don't, it will be a constant distraction. And it's not that they don't want to spend time. They're kids, so they're doing what kids do. And for some odd reason, when they're not on social media, they feel like they're missing something.
We're talking with Saniyyah Mayo, and we're talking about her book, Identifying and Breaking the Cycle. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to give you more tips on how you can raise healthy children.
Produced at CFIS-FM in Prince George, Health First is available across Canada through the National Campus and Community Radio Association.
Saniyyah Mayo has written a book called Identifying and Breaking the Cycle, and the book talks about courage and new beginnings for families if you've suffered abuse or destructive situations as a young person and you want to make changes for your family for the future. This is a great book to take. Tell us a little bit about this haiku poetry that you talk about in the book, and you write a few. How did you get into it, and how does it influence you?
Fifth grade, my teacher had an assignment, and she wanted us to write haikus, and it was like a poem format, and I just fell in love with it. And going through difficult times, being with my father, feeling the rejection in the home from my stepmother, I would write poems, and that's how I would get my, anger, frustration, my sadness, whatever emotion I was feeling, I would write it in a poem form, and it actually helped me cope with whatever I was going through. So I actually embraced it as a skill and actually as a coping mechanism.
And how has it helped you to relate to others, or has it just helped you look inside and figure a way out?
It did both. It allowed me to look and to see what was within, to actually, see the things that I didn't like, see the things that I wanted for myself, even as a young kid. But it also made me realize that this was something that was so prevalent, and it goes on all the time. Any family can identify with the cycle, whether it be negative or positive, because a cycle is just something that's been passed on from generation to generation, and it's routine. And so writing how I felt, and when I would read the poems to different people and they would say that's how they felt too, it made me feel like I needed to share a story to, tell other people about what I went through and what other people are also going through, and that they can also get through it as well.
How do we recognize cycles in our destructive cycles in our families or in our relationships? Can you give us some examples of some that we haven't talked about that perhaps that people could identify with that need to be broken, but sometimes we don't recognize them?
Another cycle I would say that I talk about is the helper in a family, where the helper is like the go-to person and they're always helping, and sometimes it's at their own expense. And as a helper, you think, okay, well, I'm doing everything good for the family, and your makeup is that you enjoy helping people, but it becomes destructive when you're actually enabling them and not helping them. And when I say that you're actually enabling them, it's like if you keep doing things for your family that they can do themselves, they'll never learn how to do it. And I was that person. My family would come to me with their issues, and I was always willing to help. But what I didn't see is that they were taking advantage of the situation and not doing it themselves. It's a good thing to help and assist, but not to the point where you're preventing them to do it themselves.
Let's talk about poverty, because you talk about poverty in your book as one of the cycles. How do we break out of that?
I talk about having a poverty mentality, and it's a mindset where people they become content with their situation. And see, growing up, I was never content. I always wanted more. And I see people that, they're certain government assistance, and they're okay with that, and there's nothing wrong with that if it's there to put in place to help you. But it becomes a problem when you stay on it and you don't look for alternatives to better yourself. And it's actually a mindset that passes from generation to generation, where you see generation after generation that there's families on government assistance with not the willpower to say, I want to get off and I want to go to school, I want to get a degree, I want to get a career, I want to do something to better myself. So it's actually a mindset.
Mm-hmm. And how hard is it to say, you know what, I want to get off that?
I think it's easy to say it. It's another thing to do it. And anything, it's so easy to recognize different things, but to break away and say, I want more, that's where the hard part comes in. But that's when you have to challenge yourself and say, is this something I really want? Because when there's something that you really want to do, you're going to put your all into it.
How strong are family ties when, even something like poverty, or, you're trying to break out of a cycle of poverty or a cycle of abuse, where they've been going on for generations? What do we need to do with our family?
As far as breaking away from it?
Well, breaking the cycle.
Well, I would be lying to say it's a walk in the park to break away, because it's really not. Because when you break away from the family dynamics of a normal behavior that has been going on for so long, you kind of become the outcast. So it kind of takes guts to actually, to say, what, this is a behavior that I don't want to participate anymore. It's hard because your family is going to look at you like something's wrong with you. Because even though they may see the destructive patterns, nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to say, hey, how I'm living, it's dysfunctional. So when you are the one that step up and say that, they feel like that maybe you're putting them down or you're looking down upon them. So it's a hard pill to swallow, because it's like you love your family, but in the same sense, it's like I don't want any parts of that. So the only thing that I would suggest is something that I did do. I just limited my interactions with my family. I still love my family. I still talk to my family. But, hey, if I go to a family gathering and you guys are arguing and I see the same destructive patterns, me and my family will just leave.
Let's talk about incest, because incest is something that really does, in some families, go on generation to generation. How does somebody break away from that and make sure that that doesn't affect the next generation?
I would definitely say that you would definitely need to receive counseling, because that is a hard thing, especially when that's something that's been a behavior that has been taught to you. And it's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt that comes with it. And a lot of times when people have been molested or things happen on like that, they end up teaching the same things to their children. It's just a repetitive cycle. So the only thing that I would suggest is that you get help, get counseling, so where you can have a therapist that you can process those feelings with and talk about and not feel shame. Because the thing about incest and things, cycles like that, it gets swept under the rug because nobody wants to talk about it. It's embarrassing. I don't want anybody to know. But when you harbor those feelings, you keep them locked up, and then you lash out instead of getting the help where you can talk to somebody that will listen without judging you.
I mean, it must be so tough if you're in that situation, or so easy perhaps to just, to marry somebody that's comes from a similar family, or that's an abuser themselves, and it gets passed on. Even though you don't want it for your children, they know the game, right?
Right. That's very common, that people actually marry or get involved with people that have similar backgrounds or is just the same, which kind of doesn't make it any better, depending on if they're healthy or not, because it can kind of just further the cycle if neither one of them have gotten help or dealt with the issues.
Right. You've written this book, Saniyyah, Mayo. What is next now for you?
Next is I'm currently thinking about putting together my next book. I have so many books and things and topics I want to address. So I'm kind of working on my next book.
This book has just come out, and what are people telling you about it?
It's getting good responses. A lot of people have contacted me and said it's really helped them look at things within their household and with their own life, things that they've seen, but they just didn't know how to break away from it. So it's getting a lot of good feedback.
You have a lot of practical advice. I know just talking to you now, it just makes me think about my family and, where I come from and look at different things. And it's interesting that, a simple book, it's not a big book, but it's packed with a lot of wisdom in there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I like to be honest with people, and I like to give them real life scenarios, stuff that people can relate to. I don't like to tell people stuff that's far-fetched, even when people say, it's hard to break away. I don't say, well, no, it's easy, because it's really not. And I just really believe in giving people wisdom through being truthful.
Mm-hmm. And, you deal with a lot of issues that are tough in this book, and that, people can maybe find some hope for. Do you have a website, or do you have a way that people can contact you if they want more information or they want to buy the book?
It's breakingthecyclebook.com is my actual website. So that's breakingthecyclebook.com.
And where can they buy the book?
They can contact me, buy the book, all of that on that website. Or they can get it on Amazon. Or if you have an Android phone, you can get it off Google Play.
Saniyyah, thanks for coming on the show. It's been great having you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week's show. I'd like to thank Feyer and the producers across the country that are making this show available to you. And we hope that you'll listen in next week, and stay tuned for the health happenings in your community after this.